This week, we welcome Mike Puglia, General Manager of Kaseya Labs, to discuss shadow risks in SaaS, the greatest weakness in security stacks. In the Leadership and Communications segment, the rise of the Chief Trust Officer. Where does the CISO fit? When another company's crisis hurts your reputation, effective workplace communication tips, and more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly. Modern attacks don't just hit devices, they target your users to gain access to Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace. And when those platforms go down, it's not just email, it's your entire business. That's why there's Kaseya 365 User, one unified platform that protects your users and SaaS applications. Phishing, credential leaks, insider risks, it stops them all. Learn more and schedule a demo at securityweekly.com/K365. Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 424, recorded December 1st, 2025. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving weekend. I did, because Ohio State finally got a monkey off of its back. That would be called the Michigan Wolverines. All right, I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining remotely are my co-hosts for this interview segment. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Thank you for Matt Patricia, by the way.
Oh, yeah, no worries, no worries. I'm happy to share. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and, what a weekend of football. Oh, my Lord. Unfortunately, my Patriots don't play until tonight, but I'm expecting a romping over the Giants, so that'll be fine. Browns took a loss to the 49ers. Sorry about that. And sorry, Summer, about the Steelers taking a loss to the Bills. That was a pretty big loss. But
it was the worst. It was the worst game that I have seen the Steelers play in probably 20 years. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Aaron Rodgers didn't look too good at the end of the game there. He looked a little beat up. Yeah.
He did.
And people were like calling for Mason Rudolph, and it's like let's just go to some of our draft picks. Like, come on.
Yeah. You've tried the Mason Rudolph thing before. It hasn't gone well.
That's right.
But big game, Ohio State over Michigan, huge. Texas Tech, big shutout over West Virginia.
Oh yeah,
good football this weekend.
Yeah, both my son's team. Well, both teams are in the championship games this weekend, so it's going to be another jam-packed football weekend, at least on the college side for sure. Also joining me, Miss Summer Fowler. Welcome, Summer.
Yes, thanks. I will agree to disagree on the good football weekend. Between the Steelers, Pitt, Tennessee, Penn State did win. My husband was at least happy, so that's all.
So, Summer, one of the memes I saw was Aaron Rodgers looked like the guys who tried to rob Home Alone, the house in Home Alone.
We actually watched Home Alone yesterday. That's pretty funny. Yeah, he really did look like that. It was really rough. The memes I've been seeing are Tomlin dressed like a clown. Yeah. And it says, get this clown out of here. So yeah.
And last, but certainly not least, my last co-host, Mr. Ben Karp. Ben's not a football guy, so I had to get all the football kind of.
No, yeah, like I suffered through it with you guys, but look, I don't have to deal with the ups or the downs after the weekend. So I just deal with, it's Monday again and rocking into work. So yeah.
And he knows what to talk about if he has to during the week, because we got him up to speed.
Yeah, exactly. He gets all.
Yeah, just catch up. I don't have all the time waste during the weekend having to do this. I just hear about it all on the pre-record and we're good to go.
Just so you know, Texas beat Texas A&M. That was a huge deal this weekend. Okay.
Yes.
So be proud.
I rub it into my sister and her husband because they are A&M grads.
There you go. See, now you know. All right.
Thanks for that value add.
This segment is sponsored by Kaseya. Visit securityweekly.com/Kaseya to learn more. Mike Puglia brings over 25 years of technology, strategy, and cybersecurity expertise to his role as Kaseya's General Manager of Kaseya Labs. Mike leads the team responsible for delivering timely, digestible, and operationally useful cyber threat intelligence that helps protect businesses from data theft, ransomware, and emerging attacks. Prior to joining Kaseya, Mike served in technical and product roles at Salesforce, Faircode, Lumigent Technologies, and BlueSocket. Mike, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Great. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you're a Boston guy, so I assume you're going to watch the Patriots game tonight. So
I am, but I'm more worried than Jason. So I'm the waiting for something to go wrong. So hopefully things will turn out all right.
Just hand the ball to Travion Henderson. You'll be fine.
There we go.
An Ohio State guy.
Ohio State,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. I track where the players go. All right. No, we're not here to talk football. We're here to talk about SaaS security. What's interesting is, as we were doing the prep call for this morning, I was doing our annual tabletop review, and the first scenario that gets presented to us is our Google account gets popped. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit. So, Mike, let's start a little bit on where are some of the kind of the challenges and potential security risk when it comes to your different SaaS providers?
Yeah, I think, it's a great question. I think we have good visibility traditionally into endpoints and networks, and sometimes SaaS gets mixed into cloud, but if cloud infrastructure, there's been a whole set building. But if we look at the SaaS applications, Google, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, NetSuite, all the SaaS tools you use, Okta, Duo, etc., we don't always have the same visibility into what is actually happening. And we've seen it over and over and over again, particularly in Google and Microsoft 365, but now we're seeing more. There's been a lot of issues with customers and their Salesforce data since about June. Just as, it's like playing whack-a-mole. As attackers move over, they find a rich target and they exploit it until, somebody steps up and makes it more difficult. And so I think the biggest thing to take is we're seeing a lot more of compromises of SaaS. Sometimes those services or products are kind of overlooked because, Google got, my Google account got compromised, or my Salesforce or my Microsoft, but it can be as devastating as, things getting wiped out. I mean, if you look at what today, what's in someone's 365 account, all the documentations, I can blast, fake invoices to people. It can be as damaging as getting a server hit.
Yeah, what we realized this morning is we use single sign-on for everything. Our MacBooks, all of our applications, etc. If Google gets compromised, we can't log into anything because that's how we're authenticating to all of our devices and applications. And you don't think about that necessarily as a potential impact, where you think, if email goes down, so what? No, it's more than that now. It is your authentication mechanism into a lot of these applications, and it's obviously storing a lot more documents, whether it's in OneDrive or Google Drive. There's a lot more exposure there than originally we used to have.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When you make the list of critical systems and data classification and all of that, usually that's just email, or that's just, our OneDrive settings, but it's equally as important nowadays. And go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think we have to take it a step above as well. It's not just a security incident that we need to be worried about. I mean, think about what's happened in the last, couple of months. We had AWS services go down. We had Microsoft services go down. We had Google services go down. It's about the resilience of the organization, right? I mean, I know Microsoft is still having issues with Azure Front Door, which is their WAF, right? Their firewall. Mm-hmm. And this is a conversation that happens all the time with our teams, is we've become so dependent on the big cloud partners and the SaaS partners and all of these large organizations, that resiliency planning around what happens when you have an outage from a cloud vendor or a SaaS vendor. Do we just sit there and not operate? That's not an option, right? So we have to be thinking about the full resilience of our organization. And we talk about it all the time. The pressures on the CISO are getting larger and larger, and resilience is one of them.
So Jason, I want to chain off of that, like where you're going, because that really hits home for me is, I think if you look back traditionally, like a lot of small and mid-sized companies especially used to say, look, these larger companies, Microsoft, Google, AWS, like we can't do what they can do in security. And so the security of these SaaS providers, these cloud providers, is going to be better than what we could do natively. And so, the risk is less. And so some of it was like, like outsourcing that risk, like the theory of outsourcing the risk to them. And I've always been a proponent of you really can't outsource the risk. Compound that now with where you were going, Jason, with, okay, on top of that, like all of our authentication is, through this cloud provider and we can't get back in. Now, if something happens, we can't fix it, right? Like you're kind of at the mercy of these SaaS providers and we're over leveraged on them. So Mike, how do you feel about that? Like, are we over leveraged? Do they really provide better security or is it just masking it? Like, it seems like a big problem to me.
I don't mean to sound like the Grim Reaper, but
go for it.
If you've looked at what's happened over the last 15 years, virtually every company is consolidated into Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and then probably Oracle. And so there are four things that we know 99.9% of the world's businesses are, and organizations that aren't, nonprofits, everything else, governments, that it hasn't happened yet, but if they are completely compromised, under the covers, not just a tenant or an application, we saw, as you pointed out, what serious implications we can have for conducting business, not even the security side of the house. I don't have a great answer for that because it's hard to go back. Because what is the alternative? If you run your ERP system on NetSuite or you run all your sales and marketing on Salesforce, what are you going to pull off the shelf that is commercial, or unless you're going to build it yourself, and install in your own premises? So I think there has to be a happy medium of living with two sides of the coin. There's one, the risk that you can't control other than due diligence. Like I think Jason just said, if, under the covers, Amazon is compromised or they have a problem or Salesforce is compromised, there's not much you can do about the underlying security of the company. The second half is the things that you can do something about is the monitoring of your tenant or your instance in that organization so you can get information when something bad has happened or something suspicious is happening. And I think if you look at it today, that side of the coin, Microsoft is in my opinion a little further in terms of SaaS applications 365, a little further down the road than others. Microsoft, if you pay for the right licenses, you can at least get risk detections. Why did Mike log in from Timbuktu and Boston at the same time, or anomalous tokens, or all the fun things that you can get some heads up into what's occurring. But if you look at most of the other SaaS providers, you can get lots of data on the operation of your instance, but not much other than who logged in terms of behavior or suspicious activity that you have control over. So I'd kind of divide it in those two halves.
Mike, do you see a shift afoot? Because some of the things I'm seeing is conversations at a very strategic level and seeing services come online that support this from the Microsofts, the AWS of the world, to start putting some of that control and capabilities for resilience back in the hands of the customer. So, for example, Azure Edge is a thing now, right? Mm-hmm. AWS hybrid cloud on-prem/edge is a thing now. Do we see a shift where customers are putting pressure on the big three, big four to start saying, I need a little bit more control. I can't be fully dependent on your cloud services. I need to bring control back on-prem and have a more hybrid approach.
I think we're starting to see that on the infrastructure side, right? Can I host, do we go back to the days of what ASPs, right? Where it's just, it's just my server hosted in its own instance, in which case you don't get the economies of scale and all the things they built. So what I think will be first, as, we keep seeing incidents occur, is the larger companies will look for, and privacy with data sovereignty and everything else, more control over their underlying infrastructure. Where it starts to get tricky is when you start to get into the SaaS application world, right? I can run my load balancers or this or that, but how many, some of the big ones, they may be able to start breaking those out, Microsoft, Salesforce, others. But the list of 1,000 other applications after that, which are in the organization, how many of those companies are going to be able to offer that, even if there is pressure to do so?
Yeah. Like SAP for your ERP system, I don't even think SAP offers an on-prem deployment anymore. It's all in the cloud, right? Same thing with Salesforce
but
and all
will
these
we be
others.
forced to?
Yeah, maybe.
That's what I wonder, because we've seen this before, a little bit of a pendulum swing, right? I think we've swung way to the other side of the pendulum of essentially shared compute, and I think are we going to see that come back? I saw a post 6 months, 12 months ago about somebody, it was a LinkedIn post, but talking about just from economy of scale of cost, how it was actually cheaper for them to move out of that and host themselves, right? And so I think the leverage it used to be, it was much more cost efficient and easier, and we didn't have to manage this stuff. But now if it's more costly, if it's harder to secure, if you're not getting the instrumentation, and when something goes down, you have no ability to bring it back up, like, it starts to weight in the other direction, doesn't it?
It does. I think the question is going to be for the vendor to be able to provide that level of capabilities. Yeah. Vendors have basically, for a lot of good reason, and we've all benefited, right? So there's always a pro on why this is going that way, is that move is allowed, faster innovation, et cetera, and not leaving behind legacy things that are from, 1999, which still exist, as everybody knows. But there's a trade-off. But I wonder, in the economics of the world, and not just how much it costs, because you can go out now and, like you said, and say, you know what, I'm going to put servers in and colo everything.
Yeah.
What software am I going to put on it? Because the on-prem version doesn't exist anymore. And then the second part is, unrelated to all of that kind of economy, is the pure brutal driving of shareholders of, everything. Oh, they're now at 1 trillion valuation, and they look, percentage points at their cloud growth, and it's in its driving behavior. They would get, we're off doing on-premise stuff again. They would get punished for that. And I don't mean to be negative about it, but actually, if you go look at, it's like, well, they should do what they want. I'm like, well, who are they being pushed by? Well, it's Wall Street. I'm like, yeah, but look at my 401k mutual funds. They're all invested. Yeah. It's me pushing them, right? So it's a bit of a circular thing. There has to be a middle ground.
It'll be weird to see if there's an opening there, right? Like if the economics of it provide that opening for a company to come out and say, I'm going to offer a competitive product to SAP. You can host it yourself on-prem, and it's going to be much more cost effective. And we don't have the back end load of having to burden all the operational cost of supporting that, right? And so I could see it would take a big mover with really good features in a product, right? But I can see it happening.
I mean, Ben, I would think the resilience factor would still have to be there the other way, right? Mm-hmm. The value prop is going to be you can host it on-prem, but when the stuff hits the fan, you're failing over to our cloud or something of that nature, right? Because you're in the opposite side of the pendulum when it's all on-prem and you have no resilience, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the questions I was going to ask, because this is so much bigger than a security issue, right? Yep. This becomes, as we talked about, it's a resilience, it's a business issue. I mean, businesses cannot function without these services. And so, there's the side of, hey, we can't we can't do those things, but then it's we can't build,
ship product.
Can't, ship product. Exactly. So that's when the real rubber meets the road. I was going to say something else. The big deal there. But Mike, do you see any of the big players right now that are serious about looking into these solutions to say, look, we don't want to be a systemic challenge. We don't want to be the thing that brings down, 40% of businesses. And like Jason's saying, or Ben, is there anyone who's offering an option or looking at offering an option that says, yeah, run on-prem, here's what we're going to have for you, you'll fail over to this? Are they looking at resilience in their products?
I think they're looking at resilience, but not in the context of we're going to have a SaaS or cloud offering. We're going to get better at what we do. And the name of the game, obviously, is where all the money is in terms of investment and valuation is AI. And so the answer you see is, well, with AI, we'll be able to better detect these mistakes and blah, blah, blah. Or we could end up with making, tremendous mistakes because it goes off, and we saw what happened in Terminator. But I don't see a huge appetite right now because, as you've probably seen, every big tech company is 100% evaluated on whatever their AI story is, right? I haven't seen anything announced in the last 6 months that doesn't have AI in the title, even though it has nothing to do with AI. But so there isn't a big appetite, but what happens is innovation. People see the market needs, someone creates, something to do it. The market starts to adopt it. They will have to react, so we'll start to see how that plays, but you are only one really big boom away from that becoming a differentiator. And I don't mean just out for the day in a certain region.
Yeah, there's an interesting kind of business case to be made that if you look at the EV market and what's happened in the EV side, there was a huge push, right, for people that they thought EVs were going to be the next big thing. Tesla, Rivian, a bunch of market entries where they were only electric. So Scout, which is a new BW owned, right, but bring back the Scout brand. So they're coming back, but it's interesting because they're coming back with electric only, but also hybrid where there's a generator. So the interesting stat is it's an 82.6% uptick on the hybrid model versus the battery model, right? And so they're creating real disruption in the market. And so I think you can look at that and think about how that could apply here, where if somebody comes out with something, I think to Jason's point, where it's more of a hybrid approach, which offers the best of both worlds, lower cost, better security, better monitoring and oversight, could really kind of differentiate and kind of offer something a lot of people are looking for right now.
Especially for AI, right? AI is going to be this interesting driver, right? If I'm a big tech company, if I'm Microsoft, Google, Amazon, you're darn right. I want everybody in the cloud because I want them using my AI. But look at other companies that are going to leverage AI in different ways. Is it going to be more cost effective for them to run those large language models on-prem or in a cloud hosted provider that's driving real value, right? And so I think AI also adds a dimension here that is going to force some of this hybridization discussion to come back, right? To say
it already is. I mean, it already is. That's why Azure Edge exists, right? It's for the AI models and it's for business intelligence, right? Yeah. It's why the AWS exists. Now it's just the products are there. It's getting the populace to shift back and watch that pendulum swing. And, I asked the initial question because if those things are happening, how much more effort would it be to have identity follow that? So that way, if things get cut off, now at least you have identity. You can log into your network. You can get to your Power BI dashboards, or you can get to Azure AI. You can start doing those things. It's like I said, I'm seeing this pendulum swing. I think the masses need to start jumping on it, but the conversations are happening a ton right now.
And if you're a large corporation, you can probably afford that model. Some of the smaller startups, right? We're still pretty dependent on not running that infrastructure, not having the resources for that infrastructure. So, Mike, when you think about the small to medium enterprises that can't move some of the stuff on-prem, what should they be thinking about in securing these SaaS-based applications that they literally, their whole business relies on them today?
Yeah, so I would say, there's going to be that section of some cutoff that they can't go back and afford to run it. And there's going to be emerging options. You see managed service providers who are becoming more versed. First, it was cloud. It was, I'm going to move your Exchange server to, hosted in Azure. Then it was 365. So there will be managed service providers that start to offer infrastructure solutions that may not be tied directly into the public cloud. But for right now, what we see, unfortunately, on a daily basis is user compromises of 365. And that is, it was always credential stuffing or stolen credentials, and now we moved to MFA, so it kind of went down, but now it's back up because there were off-the-shelf solutions out there to MFA doesn't provide much better protection. Now you're seeing, which is why you have all of the big three, especially in your consumer life, every time you log in. Would you like to use passkeys? So that is something that people can do. For those who don't know on the call, I can capture your username and password like I normally would, but I'll proxy it to the login. And then it will return the token and return the MFA challenge. So now I've got the token. I'm already authenticated, and off I go. And then we see a ton of that, thinking MFA is the silver bullet. So passkeys offer a way to tie the application and tie the device. But I don't really have any visibility to that across my applications. So that's what you're seeing people like Kaseya and others of using APIs and working with those vendors to have one place to say, I'm going to monitor my Google 365, Salesforce, etc., and it will look for anomalous behavior and allow you to lock accounts, shoot first, ask questions later, and have the insight that vendors don't necessarily provide by default out of the box. So we're seeing a lot of that occur, kind of bringing the same visibility you have to other things in your environment, but doing it in a way that does it against multiple SaaS providers. So you're not, I'll just use Microsoft Risk, and then I'll use Salesforce auditing, and then I'll just bring it into one thing that can raise those.
So kind of like the old UEBA on-prem stuff, but now doing it across the different SaaS and cloud providers.
Exactly, and that's the big thing. And
now I put my CISO risk management hat on, right? And I've just concentrated all my line of business application risk into one vendor. So talk to me about how you have the conversations about third-party vendor risk when you're that central hub for managing identity security against all of these major line of business applications for an environment.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. The way we do it, we're not an identity provider. The way we're doing it is we'll get read access via public APIs. And that way we're gathering the telemetry. Oh, Mike, boring one, but Mike logged in from Timbuktu, Mike logged in from here. Or in Salesforce, what did we just see? Well, one was tricking administrators into installing a data loader, which was really the data exporter. Then we saw Gainsight and Drift were hacked, and they came in through the API. So should somebody be notified when an administrator or anyone installs a third-party app to verify that was it? Why is the third-party app running a report or exporting, 5 billion records? And virtually every major company, from Google to Cisco to Adidas to others, had all their Salesforce data stolen because of those types of attacks. So we're not the login or the identity provider. We are capturing activity and looking at doing an analysis on that activity and generating alerts. I'll just say the other part that I find interesting is in a lot of organizations, the line of business applications, IT may know nothing about them. Like if you go look at Salesforce, and I used to work there, and so Salesforce was not compromised themselves. Other things were compromised in the tenant, but the sales department, installed it, or the marketing department got the account, and IT doesn't know anything about it. And, it's, oh, good, they're all admins. So, you see that in especially sales, marketing, and if you're doing internal development, it's still somewhat of the Wild West with what developers will do. So trying to get a handle on what are we actually talking to at least give you some insight into the application. Oh, they added a new admin user. Somebody should have had change control.
Clear out some of those blind spots.
Yeah.
The same on the HR side. Workday, Gusto, Ramp, whatever, finance teams, right? Like there's so many applications out there. You just literally put in the corporate business card Next thing you know, this thing's up and running, and IT's not managing it. It's a department. Yeah.
And it's blind to IT, which means it's usually blind to security, blind to compliance, GRC, privacy, whatever. And it's the fact that they're doing it isn't a bad thing, right? We have a lot of innovation. Just do it properly without having to make it so difficult that they're trying to go around the system.
Yeah.
That's usually not the case in the big applications like, the HR and the CRMs and the marketing. They're actually using them, but they're the only ones who know anything about it.
Yeah.
So, and then it comes home to the biggest ones we see, unfortunately, on a daily basis is overwhelmingly 365 getting compromised individuals. And then, Google after that as a certain percentage of the relative users. And if you see all the stuff that's happened, whether it was shiny hunters or scattered spider or whatever, that started with, probably started before that with, they got into the MGM and, shut down Vegas for a while, and then Harrods and M&S over in the UK. It wasn't super complicated, the initial compromise, right? You can go on LinkedIn and say, show me the Salesforce administrator for this company or the Salesforce administrators. And then I'm just going to physically call them up and ask them to do something. And people are naturally helpful. You have to do what you can, but obviously they were able to get them to do reset credentials, grant them access, install a third-party app. And having the ability to know that those things happened and get an alert on it would have saved a lot of data that just, what did they say? Was it 900 something billion records out of Salesforce from people installing that third-party app because they thought they were helping?
It would also save me about 4 hours of my tabletop exercise today too.
It's just, it's always the next big thing, right? Every threat is the worst threat. You got to worry about this one. But the reality is, let's just gain visibility across all the things we do. And SaaS is kind of a blind spot. So let's instrument that the way we've done the rest of the organization.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us on Business Security Weekly.
Thank you very much for having me, everyone.
If you want to learn how to secure your SaaS applications, please visit securityweekly.com/Kaseya to learn more.
This podcast is supported by AutoRabbit. You trust Salesforce to power your business, but even the best systems have blind spots. Hidden risks like over-permissioned users, untested code, and missing backups can quietly slip through the cracks. AutoRabbit closes those gaps. Their DevSecOps platform brings automation, governance, and security together so you can build fast and stay protected. Because speed means nothing if you can't trust what you deliver. Visit securityweekly.com/AutoRabbit to learn more. Ransomware, supply chain attacks, 0 days. Cyber threats don't wait, and neither should your business. With ThreatLocker, you're not just reacting to threats, you're stopping them before they start. Our Zero Trust endpoint protection locks down your environment with pinpoint control over what's allowed to run and what's not. No guesswork, no blind spots. Just proactive, built-for-now security that keeps your business moving. Want to see how a true default deny strategy works? Head over to securityweekly.com/ThreatLocker and take the first step towards shutting the door on threats before they even knock.
All right, now let's get into this week's articles. I don't think I have any SaaS security ones in here, unfortunately, but that's okay. It's all right. It's leadership and communication anyways. Yeah. All right, first article, cybersecurity leadership for CEOs, proactive prevention or required reaction. Can we put an "and" there?
Yeah, right. Seriously.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, this article is no surprise, right? I mean, they're arguing that cybersecurity is no longer just an IT problem. How many articles and times have we talked about that? And, how important the tone from the top is. After I read this article, I took a step back and I really looked at it. I'm like, I hope CISOs or leaders who read this article don't fall victim because of some of the examples that were listed in the article. Fall back to leaning back on the tactical when they're having conversations with CEOs. Yes. Because one of the big examples they used was the scope of a CEO has shifted and they need to be making more decisions around foundational infrastructure decisions and aging devices and endpoints. And I read that and I said, that is exactly what the CEO does not want on their plate. They don't want that noise. And if you have that conversation, you're going to be considered tactical, not strategic. And guess what? You just got knocked down a few pegs. Yeah. Nowhere in the article did it talk about helping drive revenue, drive profit, business goals, moving the needle for the organization, and having that conversation with the CEO. It leaned on making CEOs more responsible for making decisions on infrastructure purchases and aging infrastructure. No, I'm sorry, but that's way off.
No, it should be measuring business risk. We talked a little bit about this, right? It's a business resiliency issue, right?
Yes.
Right. When my Salesforce goes down and I can't communicate to my clients, it's a business issue. Yep. Now, it might have been a security issue that created that, but this article gets a little too tactical in a way that I don't think is right. In that, schedule a quarterly security briefing with your IT or security team. How about you just bring your CISO to the quarterly board meeting and you have this conversation there, right? Like, why have a separate meeting if CEOs don't have time for another recurring meeting? Just embed them into the board meeting, which is what we've been talking about.
Embed them into the business.
Into the business. And yes, there were two things that I saw as missing. One was just embedding them, have a seat for cyber at the C-suite table, right? Make them a part of the operation of the business. And the other thing that I thought was missing was be an example. As a CEO, be an example of cybersecurity. Talk about it. Don't ask for exceptions, right?
Yeah, live the culture, right?
And live the culture, exactly. And so that when you do have that lead engineer who throws a fit, the CISO can say, no, look, not the CEO doesn't even do this. She's not even asking for these exceptions. And so then all of a sudden it just becomes embedded in the culture to do the right thing.
Yeah. I think this is a risk conversation to the business at the end of the day. And I don't think this article does enough to really get into some of those issues. It talks about a little bit, but if security is part of the culture, it comes from the top, you should be presenting kind of that culture, and then whoever's running the security organization, CISO, CIO, Chief Trust Officer, which we're going to get into here in a minute, right? Have them working across the business with all the other executives, have them part of those executive meetings, have them at the board. Like, that just changes the whole dynamics. And that's why, yes, it should be proactive, but then you have to be ready for reaction in case something happens, right? Because it's now your company face out there that just went through this breach, right? And you, as the head of the company, have to
right.
be prepared, right? So that's why I said it wasn't an or to me. This was an and.
Yeah. And I mean, the articles, at least from my perspective, it was a miss. There's an opportunity here for us to hear about strategic cybersecurity embedded into the business, moving the needle for the business. And unfortunately, it came across and was put in front of us as tactical. Yeah. And being viewed from leadership as tactical. Like using examples that you put in front of a CEO that make you look tactical. So it was a miss.
Yes.
Yeah. So that leads us to the rise of the Chief Trust Officer. Where does the CISO fit? Now, I know we had Jeff Pollard was on 4 weeks ago, something like that, talking about the Chief Trust Officer and its rise, right? This article, I think, plays off of some of that Forrester report here as well. And to me, where does the CISO fit? Well, one path for the CISO is to become the Chief Trust Officer, right? Sure. And so to me, that's kind of the logical career path for the CISO in organizations that are embracing this new Chief Trust Officer. If not, then do they report to the Chief Trust Officer? Are they really separate roles? To me, they're not really.
I'm sitting there saying, is this the CIO versus the CTO conversation all over again, right? Is it a conversation of, especially in a product company, your CTO is the face to the client. They're talking about the product, right? They're evangelizing. They're part of the sales arm. Is that where you want your CISO to live? I don't think so. That's why the CIO versus the CTO existed, because you had this internal CIO who managed the business and wasn't influenced by sales, right? And that's
I think that depends
the
upon the
conflict of
context.
interest that could arise.
It depends upon the context of the business and the role, Jason. Like you asked, that's a valid question, right? And like, is that where you want your CISO to live? I think a lot of technology product companies want their CISO to live in the sales function, in the marketing function, like to evangelize the company of what they're doing right for security. But then that role, which a lot of times we call that a field CISO, right? That's not really handling internal security, and no one's really handling it, or it's not being handled well, right? And so I think the trust officer is a better alignment at a C-level, but I agree with Matt. Like, to me, it's the same guy. Like, just realize the business value that the CISO has, fully embed him in the business, and give him the mandate to handle trust as well, and align appropriately with customers, because he fully understands what you're doing inside to manage and run a world-class security program. Why are we putting another role that, again, probably isn't going to have a seat at the table and is going to be marginalized in some faction at the C-level?
Yeah, I've been struggling with this since we had Jeff on, right? Yes. I've been really thinking about it. And I was like going down the same path all of you are going down, so I won't repeat that. And I started thinking about, okay, what would the measures of success be for a chief trust officer? And by the way, I can't think of a good, is it CTrO, whatever. But I couldn't think of a good acronym or how we would say it. But anyway.
CTrO.
So in the article,
are we, Summer? That's the measure. How trusty
That's right. In the article, it says customer sentiment, confidence in the platform, and customer retention. And what I thought about was, look, when we start talking about cybersecurity, we always say it's not just the responsibility of the CISO. When I talk about customer sentiment, that would not just be the responsibility of a chief trust officer. Right. So what I feel like we're doing is we are trying to compensate for a lack of ability for a current C-suite to work together and putting another role at the table saying, well, they'll be in charge of this. When really your CIO, your CFO, your CTO, your CISO, and your CEO should be working together on things like customer sentiment and retention of customers.
I'll throw another one in there, right?
Yeah.
COO, your chief operation officer, right? If you think about the COO, what's the difference between the COO and the chief trust officer? Because the COO probably has sales and marketing and some of those customer supporting metrics under them, right? So this is where this gets a little confusing. And I don't think this is just an understanding the relationship of the CISO to the CTrO. It's also the COO and other C-level executives.
Yeah.
Honestly, the more we talk through it and the more we have these conversations, the less I support it. To be 100% candid.
Me too. No offense to any chief trust officers out there.
No, but I don't necessarily disagree with any of what you guys just said. Where I could see a chief trust officer, right, looking at it from, and Ben brought this up, right? We did this at Tenable, right? We had field CISOs, right? They were out really helping engagement with the client base, right? And if they're a very customer facing, they have sales metrics and customer success metrics and some other things, and they become kind of the forward facing CISO. But then you have somebody who owns internal security as well. Maybe it's a different title, maybe it's not. I don't care. If you're doing both in their separate roles and you split them and you know exactly what the chief trust officer is doing when it comes to enablement, sales, revenue growth, you can start to pin a set of metrics there differently than the CISO when it comes to protecting the internal side of the business. But if you try to slam these together, why? That's where it doesn't really make sense to me, because you're just adding another C-level role for this.
And another level of influence too, though, because I worry about having a chief trust officer, and most likely they'll end up reporting to the chief revenue officer, and then they have to have conversations. They're influenced by sales, right?
Yeah.
They're influenced by sales, because if you're talking about customer success being in their responsibilities, that always falls under the CRO. That's not direct to CEO.
Yeah, I think it just depends on how you define trust.
Chief revenue officer.
So I don't think in all cases I'm on the same page as everybody here, right? Like we're all having kind of the same conversation. Mm-hmm. But where I think that there's a little bit of nuance is if you're externally facing because you're a technology company and part of that role is to do that, you are trying to engender trust because what you're doing for security is building customer sentiment. So I think that there's a valid part there. I think the problem is if you're duplicating that in essentially two different roles, right? CISO, trust officer, like again, we've had this conversation about the CISO, like how many people can sit down and eat 2 pizzas in the boardroom? Like it doesn't work. Like you can't have a, chief of replacing the toilet paper and a chief of, washing the floors. Like everybody can't be a chief. And I think everybody just wants a chief title. Like if you're not a chief and you're in a security role, you're a director, right? If you're not a chief and you're in a trust officer, you're just making up a title. I don't think it helps in the same fashion. It's confusing for people.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah. Yep. Next article, the SEC has abandoned its lawsuit against SolarWinds and its chief information security officer, Mr. Tim Brown. Finally, thank you.
Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. It only took a heart attack.
This is massive, right? I mean, true. Right. I mean, not a surprise now at this point, right, where we are. But, I mean, I look at it as a massive win for the CISO community when it comes to personal risk. The worry that I have is we've talked about it in the past, right, is that does that pendulum swing all the other way? Now we just don't care anymore.
Does it take the wind out of the sails of people who are concerned?
Exactly.
Now they're like,
so
screw it. It's not a problem.
Yeah, it doesn't matter anymore. Who cares?
Yeah, I view this as two sides.
I just hope the pendulum doesn't swing all the way to the other side. We talk about that a lot, the big shifts that happen, right?
Yes.
I like that this is two sides. One, absolutely happy for Tim, for the whole community that, to me, number one, it is absurd that we would think that, he should be held personally liable, especially when you're thinking about nation state attacks. I mean, come on. If your bank were robbed because, some other country rolled tanks into it, would you hold physical security responsible for that? No. Right? Now, do they have to do the basics? Yeah. Right. I mean, there's that side of it. The side of it that I do want to make sure we don't swing the pendulum would be the truth in advertising part of it, right? We do need to have truth in advertising in a way that the next article really gets to, which really hit me, which is what sells is more important than what works.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem that we have. And so I do agree somewhat with how the case was written in the sense of, look, you can't just come out and say everything is hunky-dory and we're the greatest and buy us because we're super secure, and then you're not. But is that the CISO's? No. That's not just on him or her. So it was two sides of this one, and I'm with you, Jason. I do not want that pendulum to swing back.
Definitely not. And to be honest with you, I look at it this way. The effects on I'll call it PTSD for the CISO. That hasn't waned because those waves, that tsunami is still hitting, where this is going to affect folks wanting to take that CISO position for a long time.
Yes.
Because, he got through it, but what did that cost him?
Yeah.
Not only financially, but health-wise, mental health-wise, his family, everybody around him. I mean, the cost of this was huge.
Well, and so the impact of I think we all want legislation, regulation, something, right, where there's teeth in it for people who are responsible for these things. But that isn't just the CISO. That's the board. That's the president. That's, marketing. That's sales. Like if you're a C-level executive, you've got a dog in this hunt and you should be held to the fire. If you're basically saying, screw security, we're just going to push forward because we need to get this next thing released, right? Or we don't want to make the investments because it's just too costly and we want more revenue. So that's where I think the whole community comes out for this is like we're in favor of the right kind of regulation and oversight, but it can't be just focused on the CISO. Otherwise, we can't get anything done.
It's the power to be able to do our jobs and make sure that the organization isn't going down the path of negligence. Like that's that's what we want to do, right? We want to put in a foundation of security. We want to put in a foundation of resilience. We want to move the business forward, and we need the tools to be able to do that to influence the leaders, the other leaders in the organization and the board. That's what we want, but not at our own personal cost.
right? One of the Supreme Court decisions today actually was allowing shareholders to sue companies who don't disclose, what was it, material breaches or material things in a timely fashion, right? We're not saying that we shouldn't disclose them, right? What we're saying is we should disclose them, but there should also be protections around disclosing them and allowing that stuff to be public from a shareholder perspective, right? And so again, there's a pendulum swing here, right? What happened to Tim Brown, in my opinion, was way over the top to go after him personally, because I don't think he did anything wrong. On the other side of this, though, we don't want to hide major issues and keep them from shareholders. There is a balance somewhere in the middle. And what we're seeing with this article, but also the Supreme Court case today, is there has to be a balance somewhere in here. So we'll see where we land.
Yep.
AI gives attackers superpowers, and your employees are the soft target. Flip the script with Fable Security, the modern human risk platform. Fable's powerful risk engine connects the dots on human vulnerabilities, like password hygiene, phishing risk, and data sharing and generative AI, and deploys hyper-targeted snackable AI nudges and briefings, just in time, right where your people work. The result? Hard outcomes. 13x faster behavior change, 60 to 90% risk reduction. Make Fable part of your cybersecurity story. Visit securityweekly.com/Fable. Every AI workflow in your enterprise touches sensitive data. Customer names, email addresses, financial records. One wrong move and you're facing a compliance nightmare. Enter Area, the enterprise AI orchestration and security platform built to protect what matters most. With Area, you don't have to compromise between speed and innovation or security and governance. Quickly deploy AI without cutting corners on compliance. Give your teams the confidence to adapt AI with Area. Stop gambling with your most sensitive information. Visit securityweekly.com/Area to see it in action. That's securityweekly.com/AIRIA.
Next article, Summer hinted at this a bit, but selling to the CISO, an open letter to the cybersecurity industry. Let me just read. The cybersecurity market has lost its mind. It absolutely has. Vendors think they're selling technology. They're not. They're trying to sell confidence to people whose jobs depend on managing the impossible. I see this all the time.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this article was amazing. And Summer, I'm glad you mentioned it early, because this was, I read this article and I cried out a hallelujah, right? And I mean, at the end of the day, we have a seasoned cybersecurity professional who wrote this. Naval cyber officer, definitely has the skills to write an article and the know-how to write an article like this, and it was amazing. The part I want to read, and this is the reality of it, we can't blame the vendors alone. We created the market they're serving. We bought into the illusion that innovation equals progress. We ignored the fundamentals because they're hard and unglamorous. Say easy, do hard exists because of that statement. It's exactly why our segment exists. Plain and simple.
Yeah. We have 5,000 security companies out there building the latest and greatest. But yet, if we look at where breaches happen, it's the basics. It's security awareness training. It's spam and filtering. It's
asset management.
It's identity access management. It's the basics, right? But yet we've got, a new company's coming up every day building the next AI widget, wing bang, something or other, and we're still not doing the basics.
Yeah, right. I mean, this article hits every single piece of it. He wrote again, we filled our environments with products we couldn't fully use and called it maturity.
Yeah.
We built complexity and called it strategy. And then we act shocked that the same root causes keep taking us down. I mean, this is these are hallelujah moments. These are things that we've been chirping forever, and I am so glad the industry is putting articles like this out. So, Tyler, thank you so much. I'd love to have you on this show.
Absolutely. Next article. So this one does cross over a little bit with our first interview. When another company's crisis hurts your reputation. And it's really about how to navigate these spillovers, right? One of the things we talked about, like if we think about the AWS outage that happened a few weeks ago, Cloudflare was down, like a lot of companies got hit, and it started to create kind of a spillover crisis for other potential customers, whether they were or weren't affected. This article gets into, how do you kind of prevent that from bringing your company reputation
It's
down?
the contagion effect, right, of corporate crisis. Now, here's what I'll say. Be very, very, very careful how you navigate this. Because I remember back as an early leader, something similar happened with a competitor of the company I was working for. And I said, never let a good crisis go to waste, that old adage, right? Let's attack this and let's make sure we make a good name. And, a very seasoned CFO said to me, who also managed risk for the entire organization, said, be careful what you wish for. Because if we come out of the gates, guns a-blazing, and we attack this other company, guess what that does to our brand? Right? You start being looked at as opportunistic.
Ambulance chasers.
And the whole, ambulance chasers. And the whole thing is, he said karma's a bee. That could happen to us 3 weeks from now. And what would you feel if someone did that to us, right? So while I can embrace what's in this article, be very careful how you execute on something like this. Extremely careful.
I think a lot of... Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say, I think the purpose for this article is more to be prepared and how do you respond? Because I don't think a lot of companies think through this. Like I said, we were doing our tabletop exercise today, and you have preset communications ready, right? In case your systems goes down, you have a breach, whatever. Do you have one for this? Do you have a playbook that talks about it didn't happen to you, but because they're adjacent to you or they're one of your competitors, the spillover might come to you. How are you prepared for that? And I think that was the biggest kind of takeaway for me is how many people have thought about this particular scenario and are they prepared to deal with it?
I mean, up until item 4, I thought the same thing. But item 4 literally is leverage crisis as opportunities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a tough one.
I'm sorry, because if you take that verbatim and it says, you can create opportunities for others to differentiate gains in market or reshape the narrative. You got to be careful about that, right? Yeah. Like, if you're going out there to the public, that's the leading statement in number 4. That's what took me to kind of swing this other way. And right out of the gate, I said, you got to be careful. You have to.
I agree. And you look at the industries where this has really worked, in the sense of doing it in a better way. It's like the airline industry with safety, right? The terrible UPS flight that went down in Louisville lately. FedEx immediately grounded the same flights, right? And they reached out to see what kind of help they could give, looking at, it was a Boeing, whatever. Those are the types of things. And I think one of the things that we've done in cybersecurity with this hyper competitiveness, because of, by the way, what matters is what sells, not what works, right? We heard that from the great article from Tyler. We don't talk about breaches in the right way. We are ashamed. We hide things. We don't want, folks to know, instead of this is what happened. Let's learn from it. Let's talk about it. Let's call our peers and say, holy crap, this is what's happened. Let's call our peers and say, wow, we've heard this happen. What can we do to help? How can we get in there? Now, you can always have differentiators in how you handle things, but in the crisis moment, you don't want Florida cheering because South Carolina got hit by the hurricane, right? You want Florida to offer resources to help.
Exactly.
You don't want Nike to celebrate because of Reebok getting a huge hit. Because here's the other thing. By the way, we are all supported because we just, had, Puglia on. We're all supported by the same infrastructure.
Yeah.
Right.
And so if we aren't here to help each other and learn.
Yeah, exactly. Treat it positively,
100%.
Come out and support, figure out how to do that. But I think Matt's point is right, though, right? Like, if you were a security vendor with kernel access when CrowdStrike happened, you better believe your customers were going to ask, how are you not going to be the same problem for
Yes.
me 6 months from now, right?
Yeah.
And so address it
Yes.
from that point, not why CrowdStrike was bad. Hey, here's what we're doing to mitigate our own potential issues, right? But support CrowdStrike when that happens.
You didn't see the other EDR companies come out bashing CrowdStrike, at least the majors that I know about.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So, follow that.
But again, but be prepared, because there's a lot of kernel level capabilities out there in the market.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly right. We all love getting access to the kernels until it goes sideways. All right. Next article: effective workplace communication tips. Being better at communications helps the team work together more effectively, argue less about decisions, and finish projects faster. They list out the 5 C's to clear, concise, and effective workplace communication. I don't disagree with any of them. Courtesy is a really good one, actually.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with any of them that AI generated as well, because this was 100% an AI generated article. I can guarantee you.
I love it. Yeah.
So good job,
the same way.
ChatGPT.
Hey, AI's getting better, Jason. It's getting better.
You're super supportive of AI-generated articles, Jason.
I'm super supportive of AI-generated whatever, as long as it speeds up my workload.
There you go.
There you go. All right, last article. More frustrations on finding a job. This was a really interesting article. Look, I have a lot of friends that have been in the industry as long, if not longer than I have, that are still not working. And so this article kind of hit home a little bit around some of the frustrations I think they're definitely seeing trying to find work right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, if this was an HR podcast, we'd do a say easy do hard about this one, because there's so much wrong, right? I mean, there's so much wrong with the way we're hiring these days. The one thing that I'll take out of this is I'll say, your network is the most important resource you have. Plain and simple.
Yeah.
Use your network. It's such a powerful tool. And if you don't have a broad network, start building it now. Make connections.
The sense that stuck out about this for me, and I felt this to be true for so long, is that this says a lot about the company and how unprofessional and ethical its hiring practices are based upon, somebody reviewing resumes that actually were great fits, but the ATS kicked him out. And that happens so often, right? Like, we're all trying to rely, and I think people need to take this into their own personal professional lives. We're relying more and more on automation and AI, right? To just manage scale and get the job done faster. But at the end of the day, what are you missing because you're not looking at it and putting human eyeballs on the problem and the task? You're missing good things. You're missing good points of people, good advice. You're missing good opportunities. And what is that costing you in the long run?
Exactly. It's AI is a tool that we use to pull out keywords and things you're looking for. But what it lacks is judgment. It lacks the judgment that we need. It lacks that human oversight to make a judgment call on a specific resume that may not tick every single box, but something draws you to that resume. AI is not going to do that. Right. And that's happened to me so many times reviewing resumes, where it's like, there's something here. I got to tease it. Let me interview this person.
And you can see, though, why, as the hiring manager, you put a job out, a director of IT, and within 24 hours, you have 1,200 resumes.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, my gosh. You know what you want? You want someone to walk into your office, put down a piece of paper and say, this is the person you should hire because I've worked with him or her before, and this person's amazing. That's what I want. And so I get that it becomes the network side. But then, you look at the practices. Stop posting fake jobs. Stop doing that. And then you know what I did? I did go out to Gen AI and said, what are some innovative ways to to combat this? And they came up with some okay answers, and was saying things like, when you have a rejection, force it to have at least 3 reasons why. Right? And so that for every so that you can't just do like a broad rejection, it actually has to go through and provide thought. Do I really think that we should have to do that? Maybe not, but I think there are some things that we could think about that would make this a better process for everyone.
Yeah, you almost want it to reason the rejection, right? And I've been working on systems where we're actually training these reasoning-based systems and using the AI to kind of reason the response and then use that to actually do some really interesting stuff. But again, the human is still smarter than the machine. So even in the training and what we've been doing, I'm still more accurate than the machine. So that's good news for me, at least in the near term. Eventually it'll get smarter than me, and that's fine. I'm ready to retire anyways. But that human loop is there, but you can get these systems to give you a reason why. Then a human can look at that and go, I agree with that, or I don't agree with that. And if you do it right, you can actually use those responses to feed back into the learning algorithms to get better and better responses over time, which is kind of like the nirvana use case for how we could use these systems. But that's not how they're working today.
No, and I said this would make a great say easy, do hard for an HR team, because there's bigger problem. Part of the biggest problem is the job descriptions we're putting out there. The job
descriptions.
That's way up front. The problem starts way up front. They're generic. They're open. They're open to thousands of candidates applying. Be specific.
Yeah.
Narrow it in, right? I mean, don't just go out to Indeed and copy and paste something that already exists and replace it with your company name. Like, no. Like, you actually have to do some work and narrow that sucker in.
Yeah. Lady and gentlemen, thank you for joining me today. Always a pleasure to have you all on. It's fun when we're all here together. Thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. We'll see you next week on Business Security Weekly.